On this episode of Jeff Does Vegas.
I started just basically keeping notes. And everybody, in our industry, and I had coworkers that'd be like, I'm going to write a book someday. And it always like stuck with me. And I was like, well, I'm going to write that book. So, it always took me to I took notes and just started kind of writing things down on like my phone, like the notes app on my phone on breaks and stuff. And, I'd have like a name for that person and remember to tell the story on that one. And it just kind of started from there.
Las Vegas. It's more than just a city. It's a feeling. It's that feeling of excitement when you spot the lights of the strip out the airplane window. It's that feeling of awe as you stroll down the boulevard, taking in the sights and sounds. And it's that feeling of satisfaction, knowing that you're in the greatest city in the world. Over 42 million people from around the world share that feeling every year. And I'm one of them. Taking you to the world-famous Vegas Strip and beyond, my name is Jeff, and this is Jeff Does Vegas. Hey there, and welcome to episode number 116 of Jeff Does Vegas. Before we get into this episode of the show, I just want to take a moment to thank my guest from the last episode of the podcast, Kayla, who currently works as a dancer at a Las Vegas gentleman's club. Kayla came on the show to tell the story of how she became a dancer. We also busted some myths about the industry, talked about her daily pre- and post-work routine, and she was kind enough to share some etiquette tips for anyone thinking of visiting a club on their next trip to Vegas. If you haven't listened as of yet, jump into the archives at jeffdoesvegas.com or search out episode number 115, Interview with a Dancer, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, here we go. On to the show. Have you ever been in a casino, sitting, playing blackjack, or maybe hanging out at the roulette table and wondered, what's the dealer thinking right now? My guest for this episode of the podcast is going to take you right inside that dealer's head and share some amazing stories. Eric Sherwood entered the gaming industry following what I like to call a forced career change. As he got further into this crazy world, he realized that his everyday experiences as a casino dealer were just too good to not write down and share with the world. First came the Twitter account, originally Annoyed Casino Dealer and now Annoyed Pit Boss. Then came the book Dealt, Stories from My Life on the Felt. Please enjoy my conversation with Eric Sherwood.
I was working marketing at a small community college in the town where I was living and had lost my job, just kind of like a lot of people out there that were looking for jobs that had a college degree and nothing was really coming up. And our casino had just been built. So, the state, because I call them the state casinos, kind of out in the Midwest, East Coast. Growing up, you didn't have casinos. Casinos were in Atlantic City and Vegas. So we started having casinos, and our city built theirs in, I think it was 2009, and it was only slots for about a year. And they had a interview coming up for table games. Now, I had played poker before. I had played some, blackjack and things like that, but nothing to any crazy extent. But I thought, hey, that looks like a good, industry to get into. That would be neat, and maybe I could go deal poker somewhere in the Mediterranean on a cruise or something someday. And so I, that was kind of my thing, to deal poker. That was my goal. Well, once I got into the interview and got hired, that was everybody's goal. Everybody wanted to deal poker because, obviously you keep your own tips in poker. So it's a little more lucrative. I ended up learning some of the other games and everything and got into table games from there. And basically, so I was making unemployment while going to basically a free dealing school because they didn't pay us for it at that time until we started. So, but I was getting paid basically through unemployment for that. And we dealt cards in a warehouse to, other people that were getting hired that had no idea what they were doing dealing wise for about 3 months straight, like Monday through Friday. I think we were the morning. So I think it was like 9 to noon or, like 3 hours, 4 hours. But we were seeing the same people every day, kind of like the casino, but it got a little monotonous after a while. So I learned blackjack, roulette, and baccarat right off the bat. And we opened the casino in like July that summer, or opened the table games and went live and everything. And I mean, probably 80 to 90% of our dealers were green, absolutely new dealers. We had some experience mixed in, but the deal that the casino had set up with the local government and everything was that they had to hire so many local residents and everything. So we had a lot of green dealers, and it was interesting to say the least.
When you were sitting in that warehouse, that cold, dark, poorly lit warehouse, I'm imagining it in my head. I don't know if that's actually how it was.
It's pretty accurate.
When you were sitting there with all these other people and you were just learning dealing, did you ever have that moment of, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're like, oh, wait till we hit the floor. And, we talk about the players, like we're going to see everything. And I mean, we had like no idea. We saw everything, but I mean, it was just, but yeah, I absolutely, I was like, what are we doing here? This is like, and I think I remember day 1 or 2, like the news station had come in and was like interviewing us, and it was like, why are we being interviewed for this? Like, what is all this about? But they were just kind of trying to promote it from the casino standpoint and everything, that here comes table games. But yeah, it was interesting, and you end up getting sick of everybody you're working with before you even start working.
Let's talk a little bit about your own personal gambling experience. I mean, prior to getting involved in working in the gaming and casino industry, were you a big gambler at all? A casual gambler? Do you have any crazy stories from your own gambling experience and past?
Yeah. So So I remember in college, we would drive, up to the local casino, or Atlantic City, the closest casino to us. We would drive to play poker, and that's pretty much what I would play. Now, I would play blackjack here and there, but it just didn't really excite me. And, I knew about kind of the house edge and everything, and poker was just always what I wanted to play. So I remember, we played a lot in college and home games and things like that, especially, that was kind of the time when Texas Hold'em like took off and had the explosion. So poker definitely was a big deal. Now we didn't have casinos like, you didn't have the online Poker Stars, or we did actually in college, but you didn't have it where it was so, now there's World Series of Poker and everything on. There's casinos like pretty much everywhere throughout the United States. So we didn't have that much opportunity, I guess, to play. But anytime I could, I played poker. So poker was my main game. So I wouldn't say I was like a huge gambler. I'd play, 1-3, 1-2, no limit. I definitely play on vacation. We'd go to like Vegas maybe once a year. But yeah, that was pretty much it. As far as my kind of any crazy stories, I was living in California at one point, and I went to, this would have been a Native American casino at the time. And we went to it, and they had a poker, little small poker room, whatever, but they had a promotion. Every hour they would put like $500 or something. Maybe it wasn't every hour. Maybe it was like every like 6 hours or 8 hours. They would put like $500 into the pot before the hand started, one hand. So, everybody's staying to the river on this one. So they would just put 500 in, and then you would play your hand out like normal. And I remember, you're getting dealt the cards, and you're like, okay, just give me aces this one time on this hand. And I got 2-3 of diamonds. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So this was actually a limit table. I remember this, but so everyone starts off, they ante up, they put the blinds in. Well, everybody's just raising at this point, because it's just everybody's staying in. They want to maximize the pot even more than they can. So everybody's just, raise to the max raise, call. So everybody to see a flop. To shorten this up, I end up hitting the flush. Now, obviously I have 2-3, so it's not that strong. So we get down to the river, and I finally, like, people start folding because they have like literally nothing. And I think like 3 or 4 people stayed in, and nobody's showing. I was like, well, I have, a flush, like the worst one you can have. And everybody else mucked it. And I took down like an $800 pot or whatever on 2-3 of diamonds. So that was like my, best poker story on that kind of a cash game limit deal. But, I have a crazy, fun first time blackjack story if you want to hear that.
Yeah, for sure.
So this was on vacation, and I don't remember how old I was. I think I was 20 or whatever, but We were in North Carolina, and they had these gambling cruises that they called them. That basically you go out for like 3-4 hours, and they literally went like 2-3 miles out in international waters,
Right.
and they would flip the dinner tables over and start dealing roulette and blackjack and whatnot. And I talked my father into taking me, and which was a terrible idea for him because he was motion sickness and was like, he said it was the worst trip. It took him like 2 days to recover from that. So he was out on a lawn chair trying not to fall overboard. And they literally just take you out and they dock and they anchor and they just throw an anchor down. You're just bobbing, in the water for 3 hours gambling. So I was playing blackjack. And like I said, I wasn't 21 because I think, at that point you could do this on these gambling cruises and not be 21 or whatever. So I hadn't played blackjack probably live before, or it would have been, I played it like one time up in Canada or something and it was actually Spanish 21. I played blackjack for the first time in Canada, and it was Spanish 21. I had no idea what I was doing. So pretty much everything that I talk about on Twitter, like I was doing wrong.
Right.
But on this instance, I was playing blackjack on a cruise, and I was on third base. And I don't remember the hand. I hit when I shouldn't have, or, whatever. I'm just like, I have to get the 21. And I'm hitting or whatever. And, the tables, I can tell the table's getting angry and at me and kind of like, oh, this is kind of getting a little hairy. And the guy looks over to me. I think the dealer ended up pulling a hand, or I took his bus card or something. And the guy over on first base looks at me and goes, son, I've seen people been thrown in the ocean for less than that. That was my welcome into blackjack.
That sounds about like my entry into the blackjack world. It was at a casino here in Calgary. And I sat down at a table, and I was by myself, which was great. Cause again, blackjack, I know nothing other than got to get to 21. That's all I know.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there and I'm playing. It's like $5 a hand. Like, it's not high roller money. But it's my money and it's high roller to me. Well, some dude sits down at the table and he's like a pro, and he starts beaking at me about this and that. And how come you're not doubling down and splitting the blah, blah, blah. I had no idea what he was saying, what he was doing, why he was angry at me. All I know is I finished my one hand or my two hands, and I got up and left because it wrecked the experience for me for a very, very long time.
I believe it. And that, I see it every day at the casino that still happens. And it cracks me up because, like you said, the guy that thinks he's the pro that's getting angry, like you said, you're on a $5 table. Like, you don't have to stay at that table, buddy. Like, obviously, you ended up leaving because you didn't like him sitting there yelling at you. Who would? But like, why is the pro sitting there playing if he doesn't like how the players are playing? Now there may be not other tables and stuff. Obviously, I understand that, but yeah, we and that's half my job, is just breaking up arguments between players and like, sir, you can go to any other table, and it's just unbelievable.
And if you're such a pro, why are you sitting at the $5 table? Why are you not at the 10, 20, 50, $100, $1,000 table?
And what cracks me up is so many times that pro, as I do in hand quotes, that pro ends up making the wrong move by the book like 5 hands later. So like, they like to complain and yell at other players and yell at the dealer, but half the times they're not playing 100% correct either.
Let's talk a little bit about your progression through the gaming industry. You started off as a dealer, as people often do when they're getting into working in the gaming biz. You were dealing blackjack, working craps, working roulette.
Yeah. So initially it was just because they would only teach us like one or two main. So craps went off and just learned craps because it's obviously, so in depth. So crap dealers just initially just went and learned craps. But then they did blackjack and roulette together. And then they did like a side game. Like we all learned like, the Carney games, 3-card poker, let it ride, all those. But that was kind of like a crash course. It's like, here, we got a week left. Here, learn these games. But Baccarat, roulette, and blackjack were the three main that I learned. And then I picked up craps later to in the casino. So yeah, so I started out as a dealer dealing those three. So I did that for about 5 years. And then I got promoted to, I don't know if you say promoted. But I went up to a pit boss or supervisor, what suit, or hey, you with the tie, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, so that's the position I took after that, and that's the position I still hold. And I've had opportunities to go into surveillance, which I think before I got into the casino, it was like, oh, surveillance sounds, that sounds like so like exotic and such a cool job, and you get to catch these cheaters. But after kind of like being in the industry and kind of talking to some of the surveillance people and everything, and just it doesn't really sound sitting in front of a TV in a dark room for however long and answering phone calls that you can barely hear the pit boss and everything. So it's like that. It's like maybe I'll just stay on the floor. And I had an opportunity to end up later on going deal poker, but I would have lost my seniority, so I ended up just staying in table games. But yeah, that's pretty much, I've done table games since then, since 2010. And yeah, it's been quite the ride.
And so for somebody that's maybe not totally familiar with the positions within a casino and the jobs that people can hold, other than breaking up arguments between players, what does a pit boss do?
Yep. So, that's a big part of it. But our main, objective to the job is that, we're making sure that the games are being dealt to procedures. So there's a ton of procedures on blackjack. You have to, when you're standing there waiting for a player to hit or stay, you should have your hand on the shoe, like at all times. Like you should lean this way when you're looking to the left. You should lean to the right when you're looking to the right. You should shuffle this way. So like we're looking to make sure the dealers are dealing the game per the gaming procedures. And then on top of that, obviously, because if the dealers are doing their job and you have solid dealers behind you or in front of you, it makes our jobs a lot easier. At that point, it doesn't lend to too much chance where the players could, pull a fast one or take a shot or try to cheat or something like that. So, we're watching the players too, but pretty much we're watching the game just to make sure it's being dealt correctly. And then we're tracking the chips. Now, obviously we're not tracking every single, red chip, single chip. We're basically looking at $100 chips, $500 chips and above. So those are the chips that we are, constantly checking. So when you see a pit boss come over to a table and he may, just kind of do a quick glance and look at the players, look at the table, look at the rack, we're not checking most of the time. We're not checking to make sure, oh, this guy's up, 300 over here. We're pretty much just we're checking the rack to balance it off our computer, what we have in our computer. So when somebody colors up, and they say, color up 500, one purple, that, why they need to wait for us is we approve it. And then we make sure we mark it in our system. So, the next guy doesn't come in and end up seeing like, hey, you're missing $1,000 in purple off this table. Like, where'd it go? We know that, okay, it went to this player, cash them out. So that tracks that player. So at the end of the day, or, when the table goes dead, that money, those chips in the computer system are matching what's in the rack.
So, so what you're saying is it maybe isn't quite as glamorous as it's perceived to be in the movies.
Correct. and what I like to say on Twitter and everything is basically, especially on roulette, I'm like an adult babysitter, basically. Because there's just, there's so many things in the casino, don't you can't touch the cards on blackjack. Oh yeah, you can't have your phone out. Oh, don't touch the glass on roulette. So it's just you're just yelling that out like all day. And, something that, well, a lot of the times, that's the dealer's job to kind of police that. But a lot of times they don't care or they give up or they're just like, whatever, so it's like, we're cleaning up spills and telling them not to touch this and that. And you can't bet the other one's chips on roulette. And yeah. So it's like an adult babysitter, essentially. So breaking up arguments and telling people not to touch stuff. It really does sound like you could be either a pit boss at a casino or running a daycare. Right. I have two kids under the age of 5, and it's, I can't tell. It's just 24/7, no matter if I'm at the casino or home, what I'm yelling at for. It's just, hey, don't hit your sister. Don't do this. You can't touch that. Put that down. So it's very hard to tell if I'm coming or going in my life right now.
After the break, Eric shares a few tips and tricks for rookie gamblers who might be tempted to sit down at a table for the first time, and he discusses what inspired him to jump into the world of Twitter as the annoyed pit boss. That's coming up next on Jeff Does Vegas. Let's talk about your presence on Twitter and the Twitter account that you've got. The original account, the Annoyed Casino Dealer. When did you initially get on Twitter and start sharing your thoughts, your feelings, your opinions?
Twitter tells me that I joined January of 2012, which I knew it was around 2012, but I would have never remembered like what month or whatever. But that's what Twitter is telling me. So yeah, I started. It's about 2 years into me dealing. I started, I launched Twitter, and I don't even know. I honestly don't know. Besides, like, hey, let me, I just want to. We just deal with all like just these crazy people, crazy stories, and I'm like, and I think I had been maybe tweeting some out on just like my regular Twitter account, and then I was like, I should start like some kind of, Annoyed Casino Dealer or something. So I just kind of started it, and I just would tweet out just stuff here and there a couple times a week or whatever. And it, and I said, obviously it's been 10 years since that, since I opened that account, but it just grew organically and really over the years into, I think I'm nearing 10,000 followers, but I mean, it's taken 10 years, and it really took a lot to get started. That first year or so, it was just kind of me tweeting to like avoid, there wasn't much out there of me, of anybody coming back. But then it just, started growing and following other people, and they'd follow me back. And it just ended up becoming this thing. And then, you get Twitter is cool in that you find that niche, that's that community that's on Twitter. And, we're in that gambling community where, you see all these, you see the gamblers and people that are doing podcasts and, the casino. And so you kind of get in that community, and that's when it really took off. So, and from that point, I think when I started tweeting things out, I think what was Twitter back then? 120 characters?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
They like extended it. Yeah. But so like, you couldn't really get too many off or whatever, but I started just basically keeping notes. And, and everybody, in our industry, and I had coworkers that'd be like, I'm going to write a book someday. And it always like stuck with me. And I was like, well, I'm going to write that book. So, it always stuck me to like, I took notes and just started kind of writing things down on like my phone, like the notes app on my phone on breaks and stuff. And, I'd have like a name for that person and remember to tell the story on that one. And it just kind of started from there. And I mean, it was a slow process, obviously, because these stories are from when I dealt, and I dealt for 5 years. So, I became a pit boss in around 2014, 15. So these stories are all from back then. So they're old stories, really. But yeah, it just took me forever.
What was the original intent behind creating the Twitter account and moving on to the book? Was it just a case of needing somewhere to vent? I mean, I know I've worked with the public. I've done call center work and retail work and frontline work. So I know how terrible people can be. Was it just a case of needing to have a place to get those stories out and share them with people that have gone through similar stuff?
Oh yeah. And that's exactly it. It's like, I needed an outlet. And at the same time, obviously, hey, maybe this will take off and be big someday was always in the back of my head. But, when you're tweeting out to people and you have like 3 followers, it's like, this is, I mean, it could have died real quickly. It just, to keep that going and to keep it up was, is difficult. And I'm kind of surprised I did it, to be honest. But yeah, it was to kind of just have that outlet and vent to people. And then, to write it, it was like, cause when you go out and you even like Google casino book, you can find 1,001 books on how to beat the house. Oh, how to win at baccarat, how to win at roulette, how to count cards, how to do this. There's 1.5 million books on how to beat the house, when it's like all ridiculous to be honest. And there's a book on how to win at slots, and it's like, so, but I never saw a book from like a dealer. Now you'd see gamblers write books on their experiences and things like that, but I never really saw any kind of dealer book or, casino employee book where they would give stories out like that. So my idea, instead of just writing like a novel and things like that, was to, just kind of do a collection of short stories. And that's where it kind of started from that. And I mean, I wrote some of these stories way back in 2012 and 13. And there was times when I'd write for about a year, and then I wouldn't look at it for like a year and a half.
Right.
And I'd go back and write some more and just kind of, and then I had like 50,000 words sitting there for a long time and just kind of never really, like, I think when I started, self-publishing wasn't even a thing. I don't think so. Like I didn't, it was like, I have to go through getting a publisher and all that. So I figured that was going to take, forever if I ever got that to that point. But yeah, it just slowly was writing stories down and just, it was just all an outlet. And I like to say, like you talk about working with the public sucks. Anybody that works with the public, like you said, in retail or whatever, or worked at a fast food store, that working with the public sucks. Well, for the most part, you're in the casino. So you're not only working with the general public, you're probably working with and not every gambler's that, there's people that truly go out and they are there for entertainment and they're good people and whatever. But it's kind of like the lower, drudge of society is like hanging out at the casino every day, and the regulars anyway. So it's like, you kind of have that, like the lower form of some criminals come in from time to time that I know I've dealt to. So you kind of have that, like the lower end of the public that you're dealing to. And then they're losing hundreds and thousands of dollars.
Right.
And there's nobody there to yell at besides you.
Right.
So we get the brunt of it. They're not going to yell at themselves, at least not in front of us. So, you just get the brunt of it. And it's a dynamic that I don't think you can duplicate like anywhere else.
Yeah, that sounds fair. I mean, really the only place that I can think of where people are going to scream at someone about something that is completely out of anybody's control is maybe the airport.
Right.
That's really the only thing. I mean, I know the number of times that I've been at the airport and I've seen a flight get canceled because of lousy weather or something along those lines, and people are yelling at the poor clerk behind the counter. And I know that clerk behind the counter just wants to look at the guy and say, listen, sir, if I could put you on the plane directly into the eye of a hurricane, I absolutely would right now, but I can't. So yes. So I completely see where you're coming from on this.
Yeah, like the public, I always you say somebody, the person working the register at, a local store, like you complaining about, them not having enough fruit or something, are you complaining to her isn't going to help you get anywhere.
No.
You know what I mean? You need to complain to a little higher up, the corporate, or get on their social media or something. So, yeah. So you get that complaining, but it's people just, they berate dealers and us. And I mean, people, we come over just to look at the table for a minute, and I have players get pissed at me. And you're just like, dude, do you want, don't look at my, it's like, well, you want me to do my job? I'm trying to, that's how I know. And I say that a lot too. It's just like, dude, don't tell me how to do my job. We gotta get through it. We're fine, so it's just, it's something else. But yeah, it's just, people get angry. Obviously they're losing hundreds and thousands of dollars, and it's just no one to yell at. So they yell at us.
The book is called Dealt, Stories from My Life on the Felt. And thumbing through the book, there are some absolutely crazy stories in here. Without giving away too much, because of course we want people to go and buy the book and read it. What are some of the crazier stories in this book?
Yeah. So, and I think, going through this in these stories, there's like three or four chapters stories that are keyed in on particular players. That if you've read it, the Kid, Norman High Limit, Kenya towards the end of the book, those are just characters that we ended up dealing with, and some of them were regulars. And it's just their stories and how they acted and how they interacted was just completely incredible. So stories like that is just, you got to read it to see the characters behind it and what their story is and everything. And some of them, I mentioned that one on the Kid, and I had somebody message me and saying, I'd like to read that whole book about him. So maybe that's for book number 2 or 3 or something. But yeah, those could be their own book. But just some of the stories, I mean, A Golden Night, where, the guy was drunk, literally whipped it out and was urinating in between ATM machines. And just, and then, we're like, dude, what are you doing? Because we couldn't tell what he was doing at the moment. And he turns around and he's just like, what? And it's just out. And you're just like, you're just like, what are we doing here? And then, and same thing kind of on that same note was we've had craps players that, it's a hot roll, or I can't miss a hot roll. So instead of going to the bathroom, that's going to take me about 3 minutes. Well, I'll just go in my pants. Jesus. So I've had craps players just, piss their pants. So yeah, good times like that. So bodily functions that you weren't thinking of, you wouldn't think getting into this industry that you'd have to deal with. But I mean, just, coming out on a new shift and you're walking the floor to get to your pit assignment and there's somebody passed out in a garbage can. And you're just like, what are we walking in on? Like, what happened last night? Like, this dude's passed out in a trash can. Like, where's his friends? Where's anybody? So like just seeing stuff like that, like it's nuts. And then obviously, you see the high swings, people winning thousands, losing thousands, sometimes in the same table at the same time, just tens, thousands, hundreds of thousands. It's insane. So yeah, I mean, it's just, so that's what I tried to encompass the book around, was just some of these certain players and characters that I've interacted with over the years. And then obviously like just random stories like that.
A lot of your Twitter account is talking about the mistakes that people make when they're in the casino, playing table games, whatever it is they happen to be doing. And I think that's great. I think it's fantastic that stuff is getting pointed out to them. What are some of the tips and tricks that you can share for people who are maybe new to the casino world, new to going into gaming, and maybe never sat down at a table and played a game before? Do you have any faux pas or common errors that people make that you can share?
It all starts with knowing the game. And, I mentioned earlier about, I sat blackjack and was doing whatever. And I played what I thought was blackjack in Canada on spring break. And it ended up being Spanish 21. I had no idea. Now, obviously there's similar games, but come on. But it wasn't, I was like, man, there's a lot. Where's the tens on this deck? But yeah, know the game. I mean, with the internet today, there's never been more of a time you can quickly, download 4 blackjack apps right now if you wanted to and play for free on your phone. So, look it up, research it, learn the game, kind of have an idea of what you're doing before you sit. So like, that's a huge one. And then, yeah, there's just casino, etiquette. And obviously, like I'm a big, advocate of tipping your dealer and having a good time and not yelling at your dealer and pit boss and things like that. But yeah, just be friendly, like, try to have a good time, come with money that you can, it's like your entertainment budget for the week or the day or the night, like come with money that you can afford to lose. Don't be coming with your mortgage money or next month's mortgage money and everything. I mean, there's so many, gambling, just what not to do. But yeah, I mean, there's little rules, but the main thing, don't touch the cards. The dealer can't take money out of your hands. That's a big one, which you see that in the movies a lot. Roulette, you can't go leaning over the glass and looking at the wheel and things like that. So, things like that. But mostly, if you want to go play blackjack or any table game, even at the very least, you watch for maybe 10 minutes and ask a player or the dealers. Most dealers will help you out and give you a heads up. Even if you're playing blackjack and say, hey, is this a hit or a stay? They'll give you an answer. And I don't know if it's the right one, because some dealers don't know all the blackjack strategy as well. But, you can get advice from players and the dealer and stuff too. So you can ask. But yeah, just be friendly. That's my big thing, going in there with a good time in mind, and just not be a douchebag. Basically, is my number one.
That is very good advice. If people want to get their hands on a copy of the book, it is available in a few different ways in both hard copy and digital format.
Yes. So Amazon has the book on there, the hard copy, which is in paper book, and then also on the Kindle on Amazon. So they make it pretty easy on there. You can order it there. I am working on trying to get some kind of Vegas book signing set up, but who knows when that'll be. I've had like people messaging me like specific dates they'll be out there. I'm like, I'll try to work around it. But, I'm trying to get something set up and maybe multiple places, but definitely one, if not. So I will tweet that out once something's set up.
Fantastic. If people want to follow you on Twitter, how do they do so?
Yep, at Annoyed Pit Boss. Pretty easy there.
Excellent. Eric, thank you so much for taking time and jumping on. I really do appreciate it. And congratulations on the book. I'm looking forward to diving into it.
Yep, absolutely, Jeff. Thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Once again, Dealt, Stories from My Life on the Felt, is now available from your favorite online bookseller in both digital and paperback formats. And be sure to follow Eric on Twitter at Annoyed Pit Boss. Of course, you can find these links in the show notes at jeffdoesvegas.com. And that wraps up another episode of Jeff Does Vegas. If you've got feedback on this episode of the show, or any other episode for that matter, or you've got suggestions and ideas for topics you'd like me to cover on the podcast, please feel free to reach out to me via Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Jeff Does Vegas, or drop me an email directly at jeff@jeffdoesvegas.com. In the meantime, thank you so much for checking out the show. Be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts so you'll know the moment new episodes are available. And don't forget to visit jeffdoesvegas.com for past episodes and show notes. My name is Jeff, and this has been Jeff Does Vegas, a Walker New Media production.